Welcome, Russ, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Impaled or this new album. In this case, in general, for the career from the Impaled, because you just released it, you will release like a demo Medicale in 2025, and more things related to the metal world in general. So we are starting by asking, how are you doing today? How did the band the last couple years?
Doing okay. The band's doing okay the last couple of years. We play a few shows here and there when we feel like it and just have a good time. I'm doing fine. I'm in the studio right now putting down some new bass tracks for the new Exhumed record. So I can't be stopped. I just got to keep going and keep working on shit or I get bored.
Amazing, amazing. Now, as you are working in a new work for Exhume, so why? And obviously, I think the next question is the common one. Why the band is not releasing anything, any album since your last album, since the Dead Still Dead Remain? Oh, either
Uh,
way, that it was a record at that moment because your
yes,
last
yes.
album it was the Last Gap from 2007.
Well, Impaled, I like to joke that we're just a lazy band and we just want to chill. But the truth be told, there was after the last record, there was a full tour cycle and for the last gasp, and we did that. And then a lot of people just kind of Raul went back to school. Jason was kind of like interested in starting a family at some point, and Sean also started a family, and so Impaled just kind of like is a bit of a victim to people's real lives. Fortunately, I don't have a real life or any plans to start a family or any desire to go back to school. So I'm ready I was ready to rejoin Exhume when the time came because I didn't have a whole shit ton on my plate. Ludicra had ended. Impaled was kind of, I don't want to say on hiatus, but we're like, what do we do? It's like, hey, maybe we'll record the first record, and nobody really wanted to tour so much. So lucky for me, I've been kept busy doing what I want to do, and they've been very happy doing what they want to do. Maybe someday, who knows? I've heard some guys kicking around some riffs in the background. They sound pretty good, but as it is, it's like we get together for birthdays, obviously, and to hang out and practice once in a great while. Just kind of happened.
Okay, okay. Another question, I think it is a common one. What do you decide to re-record or re-release your first album, The Dead Shall Dead Remain, and then in 2013 with the same name, with a different cover art, or like a small, it's like a tiny different cover art, but
Yeah.
then for the tiny different cover art. So why do you decide to bring back your first album?
Well, one of the reasons was because legally we can't release the original recording.
Mm.
So we were like, okay, well, all of us have a few issues with it. We are like, maybe we could do better. We were working with a different engineer who was Testament's engineer at the time, and he did like a test mix on some shit. And we were like, wow, it sounds really cool. It'd be really nice to have this record sound like it wasn't recorded in some guy's apartment, as an afterthought. And we thought, we played sloppy on it. We were definitely a little bit hammered during most of that recording session. So we thought we could clean it up and legally release the songs, at least since the original album has been in contract hell for, it had been for the up to 10 years at that point. And that one it was kind of easy. We were like, it's kind of a shit recording. Let's make it a little better. And then we kind of stopped there. Mondo Medicale is also under the same kind of binding legal hell that it is in, but I don't think any of us ever really had the stomach to want to re-record that. It kind of feels done as is, unlike the Dead Shall Dead Remain.
Hmm. Okay, yes, yes. Well, when I take a look for this for the new demo Medicali, it's like the same songs from your Mondo Medicali for the
Yeah,
second album. So it's like you try to bring back the first two albums in this case, and if these situations continue with the first album now the second album. Is there a way, for example, that Death After Life or the Last Gap will return
oh,
for this?
well, Death After Life is actually is that one at least is owned by a label that likes to work with people. So I believe it's getting a CD repress right now from somebody. It's had an LP repress. Century Media is a functioning label. And even though our relationship didn't work out, things remained, didn't work out in a business sense, but it was like perfectly friendly. They're like, hey, things aren't going the way we wanted, and we think we're gonna not ask you for your next record. And we were like, okay, that's fine. So I, know employees from there, and they're still cool people, unlike the kind of contentious relationship we have with Necropolis. As far as putting down demo Medicale, that was never like in the cards. We were kind of trying to negotiate in good faith with the old label, and demo Medicale kind of fell into our laps in like 2022. The members of the band that were still in, me and Raul and Sean, had completely forgotten that recording existed until Andrew Labar, our old guitar player, volunteered it to us. And we were like, holy shit, we actually have these songs recorded pretty fucking well. And it sounds pretty close to Mondo. This could be kind of a stopgap. It felt like it could be released as a thing all on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And then still sort of be like, hey, here's the songs from Mondo. At least there's a version of them you can buy.
Oh, okay. Interesting to know. And all the other thing that captured my attention also all the times, because in Latin America the things worked very differently. When you create, I remember when it was in the 80s or the 90s and bands appears at that moment, you try to release an album. Try to release an album here, and these bands takes like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and I don't know, a lot of years to release a new album or a demo here in Latin America. But now when I check in here, you describe in Impaled or Impale are checking here that you started the career in 1995, at the middle of the 90s, and then you decide to release your first album in 2000s, 5 years later when the band started the band. So what do you decide to release your first album 5 years later? Because in US it's not common to release a full length after 5 years at that moment.
I mean, we wanted to release an album as soon as we could. The first contract we got, we signed it, and we were like, all right, well, we better finish writing a record. So, I mean, there was no plan other than we just wanted to move forward and start getting out on tour and start doing what we could do nationally. And it just, Necropolis happened to be the label that picked us up at the time. They were local, so they'd seen the different employees had seen us play. We knew them from around the scene, and they were like, "Hey, here's this really, really awful, shitty, terrible contract," and we were like, "Yeah, whatever it takes to get a record out, let's fucking do it." So it was there was no plan involved. It was just like seizing the moment as it came.
Okay, okay. All the time captured my attention from, okay, from the Impel is because since the beginning, talking about from the first album like a toilet, like visceral, like gorgets, they're like gorge there. That the second album had have someone in the in the cure and in the hospital area. I don't know.
Yeah,
So or the heart with the machines or the things involved with the third album, and the last one is just guts. In the third album, Last Gap is just guts in the cover art. So why do you decide to lean down all the cover arts for the guts or for the gore stuff? So what do you find in the gore stuff that you cannot find in other kind of topics, for example?
well, I think it's just it's that idea of life and death and what are we here for. And it's like in the lyrics for like Gross Anatomy, it's like I don't really care about spiritual shit. I don't really care about demons. I don't believe in aliens existing, at least not that in any kind of way that would affect us. But one thing that is very real is that line between life and death. And we started off a little bit sillier and gorier and like more into a lot of songs about shit and feces and just kind of being edge lord, shocking in that way. And then it kind of came around to more of like, well, we're already doing these like medical style carcass lyrics. Like, what if we're like we just kind of naturally evolved. Like, let's be like that horror movie I want to see. Like, I want to see that horror movie about crazy doctors. And like, I love from like the original James Whale Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein up to like Reanimator, and even like the dentist with Corbin Burnson and shit, like really schlocky ass crazy doctor movies. Maybe it's my own fear. I mean, I've certainly gone to the hospital plenty of times and had like really inept people, and these are people you rely on for your life and for your health, and they're just humans like anybody else. And I think that's a more visceral, real fear to have than say anything about someone randomly, some serial killer or something. Or whatever. Um, it's like what's real and what feels like what are these actual concerns? And so that's just kind of the way we've channeled it. But of course, we love horror movies and twists and shit like that. So that's why we've leaned into the gore. Um, I don't know. I could talk politics. I could talk politics all day, but I don't feel like writing music about it.
Hmm. Okay, okay. Another topic that always capture my attention when, well, I'm with you with this with the same topic when you try to. I saw with your background there is some movies like Night of the Living Dead and other movies, so horror movies. That's
Yes.
completely related with the music that you played with Impale, with Exhumed, and a lot of musicians in the brutal death, in the death metal or the gore grind. I don't know. A lot of bands love this kind of people, love this kind of horror movies from from the 70s, 80s, or the 90s. Or even there's a new movies from the horror that is a great ones, mostly or not the great ones like the 80s or 70s, but but I know about this one. But one thing that captured my attention, some when I speak with another people is outside of our world, and these people thinks that we are something missing in our brains, or something's not very functional with our brains because you like the cover, you like the horror movies, terror movies, or horrifying stuff. And they think that we are something not very well for in our brains
Right.
to see this kind of. So for this, do you think if we related this, do you think that something is wrong with us when they try to relate the death metal stuff, the brutal death metal or the gore grind with the horror movies all the time?
I don't think there's anything wrong with us. It's a different way to get the adrenaline pumping. Some people like roller coasters. There's people who like to put on those fucking flight suits and jump off a cliff and fly. And I'm like, and that's cool, great for you. You're getting a lot of serotonin and adrenaline out of that. It's like I could sit back and have a cocktail and watch a horror movie and get the same adrenaline and be a lot more relaxed when it's done than jumping off a fucking cliff. So, I mean, I think there's something wrong with those people in their fucking brain. But maybe they look at it the same way to me. But I think it's more of just like it's that same kind of challenging your fear of the unknown. And for us, it's like, well, you can watch a movie and challenge your fear of death and the way you feel about it. But maybe also there's a really funny kill scene from Jason when he like smacks somebody up in a sleeping bag or something. So there's like a goofy, morbid style entertainment out of it. I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary for the human race. I mean, people used to go to the gallows for entertainment to watch people get hung, or to the guillotine, or to the Colosseum to watch gladiators kill the fuck out of each other, like actually murder each other. Hey, we're just watching movies. I'm not watching anybody in any actual danger. I think there's something more wrong with somebody who enjoys MMA than somebody who enjoys fucking the horror movie.
Well, okay. Okay. Now talking about more related with the new bands, talking about now the gore stuff, the guttural stuff, and I think one thing that is well, I remember when I hear for the first out songs from Cannibal Corpse, speaking about the viscerals or gods, everything or murder, I
Yeah.
just try to reflect this one because I just try to say, how do you see this if you eat meat like this meat of this kind of thing. No, just I just try to explore more things about this. But now there's a counterproductive thing with the new movements of the death metal or the new musicians. They play brutal death metal. They play gore grind and stuff. But curious thing that this mostly all these peoples are veganist or vegetarian. That's a curious thing on this topic. I don't know why, but it's like the black metal is you play black metal, but you are Christian. You are a Christian follower from the Pope. So that's there is.
Well, I became a vegetarian around 1992.
Mhm.
So you say like these new musicians, but I'm one of the old musicians, and I only recently in like the last year started eating like oysters and snails. I still do not eat chicken. I don't like it. I don't like beef. I don't like bacon.
Mhm.
I don't like any of that shit. And at this point, I'm sure at some point I could have gone on a soapbox and told you the many, many reasons why you should eat less meat or be vegetarian. Now I don't give a fuck. Eat what you want. I'm too old for this world. I don't give a fuck. We're going downhill. I'm gonna have fun watching it burn while I'm on my way out. But I don't like meat. It's gross. And if you say like it's kind of funny, but it's like I don't know. Maybe that's part of the visceralness that I feel when I look at horror and watching meat and blood be torn apart in a human, and I can see that in other things. And but it's not so much like I don't give a fuck. Like cows, pigs. I'm not trying to say like that they're not here to be eaten. They are. That is a normal thing to do. But for me, I think it's fucking gross, and I just don't want any part of it. But I will slurp down some oysters and escargot now. So, as far as the young people, I think maybe there is a kind of a slightly larger movement
Mhm.
just amongst young people to maybe reflect upon the way society has been run and look at little things that they can change about their life about it. And, I don't think there's any argument that the meat industry is a really poisonous, awful industry that, you know, poisons the groundwater and does all sorts of horrible things. So it's like, yeah, maybe eating a little less meat isn't such a bad thing. I'm not saying not to. I'm just saying maybe it's a good thing to look at the world from a different perspective and maybe try to like live your life in a way that uh, is a little bit different, but makes you feel good.
Mhm. Okay, okay, and all with this topic that there are new bands trying to carry the torch for the death metal era, for the gold grind of the brutal death. I don't know, a lot of torch to bring, a lot of torch to carry. So and this one, so I always try to denote that bands from the 80s or 90s that try they have the personal sound. When you I
Yeah.
remember when I was there listening bands from Swedish, Finland, from US, from or Brazil or UK. All these bands has a personal sound. You can mention 50 bands, and these 50 bands sound differently. Even all these play death metal, but these 50 bands sounds different. But now we have thousands of records, and we don't have any more like these 50 bands that sounds different like it passed in the 80s or 90s or the beginnings of 2000s. So, and with this, do you think that in the future there is death metal or grindcore or gore grind or brutal stuff will be raised with another country that represent their own sound without the influence from the old bands.
Well, this gets into a larger topic I've had a lot of thought about, which is like kind of the homogenization of culture in general. And, it could be when you're talking about those sounds that like, the Gothenburg sound, right? Or the old New York death metal sound. Or, you go back to like, Birmingham, England was like inventing heavy metal and like it was like gravitated out from there. You have these regional areas that are a little bit sequestered. They have scenes. They have, and it goes for anything. It goes for visual arts. It goes for music of all genres, even if like, EDM, like there's like, something that we start off with, oh, that's called like Atlantic Bumper Zone EDM. But it's like now we're living in a world where we're so interconnected with the internet and everything is got algorithms over it to like feed people what keeps them just happy, not challenged at all. And in the meantime, you're losing these kind of regional influences. And maybe people are getting a little disconnected from their local music scene and their local art scene. And there's something to be said. Like when Impale was coming up, we were in the internet was here, but it was obviously not what the internet is now. But we were playing these shows in tiny little clubs, like not even clubs. We were playing like punk warehouses. So we were playing with punk rock bands, and we still wanted to do death metal because we had our influences from like Dismember, Carcass, and stuff like that. And but we were playing with these punk bands because those were the only fucking shows around. So we wanted to play. So we made friends with those punks. We got influenced by those punks. Some of them got influenced by us, and they kind of did their crossover metal bands. And there was a lot of pollination there that led to something that I felt was a little more distinct about like what was going on in, say, the Bay Area. I mean, and you could extract that. You could go to like, well, New York hardcore was having its kind of area, and sludge from Arizona was having its thing, or New Orleans, better yet. I think we have lost some of that globally. Like there is such an, I'm talking to you, right? Like we're having this instant connection. It's great. It's beautiful, but the world is a smaller place, and it's kind of hard to have that, to feel like things are growing and evolving in a certain way when it's all just kind of smushed together. And social media has, their whole goal is to keep everything the same and homogenized, so that you just keep your eyes on it. They don't want to challenge people. So you really have to look for the stuff that does sound different now.
Mhm. That is right. That is right. Always I think about the things because a lot of people say that is with this globalization, the world is very small. No, like it was, it was before. When you don't know everything about nothing in Japan, we don't know what the hell they're doing. But now you just one click away to know what exactly happened in Japan now at this moment. You can see cameras everywhere. So
Yeah, and you can instantly go and just go on Bandcamp and look up like you know Japanese grindcore, and it's going to give you the top artists, and so that's just good. It's all going to be fed to you in a certain way, even when you're looking for something specific. It's hard. That's why it's important to have like a community of real people in your life. Try to make those face-to-face connections, because that's where shit's going to evolve, and you're going to actually talk to people and have that move on and have influences from people, as opposed to just finding your shit from like a random search on Metal Encyclopedia.
Mm, okay. Okay, now let's do something related with the movies and with the four albums that Impel has. Oh, the four albums that Impel has. So now if you try to relate each movie that you like most, especially for the horror movies, which horror movie will you relate to the each album that you release with Impel?
Oh, let's see. The Dead Shall Dead Remain is going to be the hardest one, because that's just like, I mean, I guess that would be like closest related would be like Street Trash would be a good related movie for that one. It's just garbage, just filth and disgusting, and just any nasty thing you can think of is a go.
Mhm.
So I think that's the Dead Shall Remain. I'm going to say Street Trash. Mondo Medicale, probably the closest horror movie kind of feeling and shit that I was watching at the time would be, I'm going to remember the name correctly. It's a German movie called Anatomie, Anatomie, if I'm remembering correctly. It's got Franca Potente in it,
Mhm.
and it's about medical students. And there's this, one of them is like using plastination to create like 3D anatomical models and dissecting people alive, and doing some like experiments on live people, and this stuff, and then displaying them, kind of a modern version of waxwork or something. But it's got this really cool feel to it, and a very like kind of clean, sterile feel that's, I think, is very much like with blood splatters. It's very much Mondo Medicale. Death After Life is a mix of Frankenstein and Reanimator. Those are like some of my favorite influences. The Stuart Gordon Reanimator movies, in particular, Reanimator and Bride of Reanimator. The first two are, or I guess Brian Usna did the second one, and I just love both of those fucking movies. They're colorful and they're disgusting, and but basically that whole idea of trying to overcome death, in those movies they do. On our album they do not, because of course that's nonsense. The whole album is about failing at what you're trying to do, which is kind of ironic because that album kind of failed. But in any case, uh, and then The Last Gasp. Well, I'd like to say that, what horror movie could I relate that one to? I think I made a crack earlier about not wanting to be political, but actually The Last Gasp is a political record. It's extremely political. It's just gory. So I don't know if you could call 1984 a horror movie, but that's the movie it would relate to the most.
Okay, okay. So now, as demo medicale will be released or will be released in the coming days for this one. So, what kind of plans do you have for Impale? As you provide me information, the musician is far away to release a new record or compose new record, and you're more focused with Exhumed to release the new record from Exhumed. So, what kind of plans do you have for Impale at this moment?
Impale, well, we got this record out. We just played a couple shows to like for the release of it up in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. There's talk of some other shows. Some fests have written us, and we haven't been able to schedule one yet where we're all on the same exact schedule. But that's our plan is to keep going. We're not quitting. We're just slow. And there's been some material written. I just don't want to make promises. If we can get together and we can do it, and everybody's like schedule can get together, we're all still friends, all five of us, with Leon back in the band permanently, along with Jason Kokel. And I love those guys, and we have a lot of fun. So here's hoping we can do it one more time at least, right?
Mhm. Okay. And with this demo medically, with this released for the second album or recorded for the second album, is there a way that is some vibes returning to record a new album in the future? For example, in the next 2 3 years, who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's possible. Anything's possible. An asteroid could crash into the world tomorrow, and that's also possible.
That's
So
possible.
yeah, I think the chances of a new Impaled record are slightly higher than an asteroid crashing into the Earth. But
Okay. And now we are very close to this interview with Ross, and for this topic. So now, as you can see, there is a thousand of bad releasing extreme material with a lot of perfection in the music. It's not because when I hear 4 albums from Impale, you sound organic, more stuff, more natural way. But now there's a super technical musician, super productions. There's no bad records now. You can find like 50 releases per weekend, and these 50 releases sounds amazing. No sounds bad, no everything, no all